If more of you supported the show, I'd be less sick of podcasts.
Blah, blah, blah.
Sending out good vibes.
Blah, blah, blah.
Good vibes.
Blah,
Good vibes.
blah, blah, blah.
Good vibes.
He fell off the stage, broke his knee, and then he went in for orthopedic surgery. You know, this is like lightweight. We're just gonna, give you a little bit of anesthesia and put your knee back together, kind of surgery. And they gave him the anesthesia, and he didn't wake up.
Okay, guys, welcome back to the Grimerica show. We're going to be chatting with Olav Phillips a little bit later. I'm sure you guys remember him, friend of the show, great guest. It does get a little weird at times. I was still not back from my vacation.
What do you mean it gets weird?
It gets weird with my audio, doesn't it? And then I cut out early.
Oh, yeah, you did just fucking leave early.
That's right. Because I was on vacation. It took us an hour and a half to get fucking started because I wasn't here to help you guys set up.
It was the Zoom issue.
That's right.
It was Zoom and
That's what I'm saying.
blaming Zoom. Anyway, it's a fun chat, long chat, good chat. Olav's a good dude. And yeah, it's always fun to chat with Olav. Of course, we got everybody's favorite Steam Puff here, Graham Steam Puff Dunlap. How's it going, buddy?
Hot.
Yeah. Steam Puff's the opposite of snowflake, of course. So it's like a hot snowflake. And you looking a little skinnier?
Yeah, I lost a few pounds.
Look like you're sucking your gut in a little but
bit,
that's okay. It's okay.
Got to do that for the side view of the camera.
Yeah, that's right.
I'd rather face you than the camera. But yeah, it's going pretty good. Still off wheat and sugar. It's going good.
They say no sound, Brody. You're still off wheat and sugar?
Yeah.
Really?
Plain ketchup. I am also off wheat and sugar.
Really?
Yeah. And
But not-
dairy.
And dairy.
Except butter.
Dairy. Cheese too?
Off cheese.
Oof, man, that makes it even that much tougher.
Cheese is a cheat sometimes.
I think they were just.
I'll hammer into some fucking cheese. But, yeah. No cheese.
Yeah, it's going pretty good. Still up.
I do a bit of ghee and butter.
Yep.
But
That's good. Ghee's good.
I was actually at the Tim Hortons drive-thru today getting a coffee, looking at the fucking breakfast sandwich was looking good. I was like, can I just get the meat from that somehow with the cheese melted on it? But I didn't break down. I powered through. Good things. So what's new, buddy? How you been?
Pretty
Second
good.
show from the new studio.
Yeah, pretty good. It's getting better and better here. We're almost, we got a little bit of ways to go here, but it's going good.
James Nation just texted me and said that the sound is working on YouTube.
Oh, good. Thanks, James.
Just so we know.
When's the handler going to come by and see us?
He keeps saying he's going to come by when he chooses to answer my text. I said yo to him on Monday, January 7th, and he just responded. Now that I've publicly outed him, he'll probably text me tomorrow and invite me for lunch. But we'll have to get him out here maybe next week.
Yeah, for
Come
sure.
out to the show next Wednesday, James.
Yeah.
Help us set some shit up. So what's new, buddy? How you been?
Good. I went to, you want to hear about the C5?
Oh, yeah. I want to hear all about that. The one you invited me on? You can't hold me back anymore, can you?
No, everybody's wanting you to come out now, so you're going to have to
That
start
must just
coming.
fucking drive you crazy.
Why?
And they're like,
I want you
"Bring
to come
Darren."
out.
Do you?
Yeah, you're ready.
Okay.
You're ready.
Excellent. I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Just leave your hate at home and fill your heart full of
I'm
love.
like
And
young
you're,
Luke Skywalker.
you're ready.
You're like Darth Vader.
So that day, I'll tell you the story, a little bit of the story. So that day,
Can't wait.
I was thinking about doing more of like an affirmation for Grimerica or an intention, something like that, right? I was thinking, what would I do? Like, how would I do that? Because you want to try and keep it positive, and you don't want to include negatives in the like if you were to do a mantra or something.
That's right.
So I was thinking, and you and I talk about being of service and how that's an important thing. Like if you just make sure that you're serving people or serving others, everything should work out. So I was thinking, well, what if it was something like, Grimerica continues to help people, or, we continue to help others. Because we didn't even start out to do that. It's not like we do that, but somehow.
I don't think we're helping anyone do anything other than kill time.
Some people say it.
I know they do. Yeah,
I know.
That's just my perception.
But
of it.
then, what else could I do?
I mean, we're helping me.
But what else we could do?
my journey.
We can do other ways, right? Other things we're working on could help others under.
We got some
America
stuff. We got some irons in the fire that could help.
So, anyways, that was kind of my thought process. So I go to ESETI. It's my first time leading the whole thing. Like I've led some of the meditations before, but I'm training for CAC when we go to contact in the cabin with all these Grimerians.
You're going to run a couple events at CAC?
Dude, yeah. We're going to go skywatching. We're going to CE5 it up. We're going to see all kinds of stuff flying around.
CAC 2019 at HD Travel at Me.
Maybe there'll be landings.
You guys are going to get to play Dungeons and Dragons with Graham. I don't think you're going to be able to convince Randall to play Dungeons and Dragons. Graham will play, but I'm sure Randall will come out and do some sea setting with you guys. And he'll definitely blow your minds with some fireside chats.
Yeah.
And he's going to show you some crazy geology. Get a CAC ticket. Seriously, you're going to be fucking sorry if you miss this.
Oh, this is funny. So I told Adam as well that we were going out and what time we were starting the thing at. Because it was an early start, you know. It was an outdoor thing. It's like 5 degrees probably. Five. It went probably 5 to -3, something like that. I don't think it got below 0. Anyway, it's pretty cold, but it didn't feel that cold. No wind. So Adam said, look straight up at 7. But we got there at like 7:03. Like I was trying to look up because I thought, who knows, man? Adam's been getting these remote viewing things bang on. Him and Justin and with his cat in the box.
Which time zone?
Which time zone?
Well, 7 his time or 7 your time?
7 my time,
okay.
Our time.
That was coordinated beforehand?
What was?
The time zone?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was specific to say 9 his time.
Okay.
So we get there, we set up, and it's cloudy. It's cloudy, quite cloudy. Little bubble clouds all over, like, you know, those little puffy clouds, little steam
New
puffy
moon?
clouds. No, not quite. That was the only downfall. It's a little bit of a quarter moon. So I'm asking, so we get it set up and all that, and we're saying, like, right away when we got it, we're going to have to put out this intention to get rid of these clouds, because sometimes, you know, that seems to help.
So you guys did cloud burst and NC setting?
Enough giggling from the peanut gallery.
You can cram all that into one night?
All I hear is
That's
Brody,
how people get killed.
Brody in the background. Keep your giggles to yourself over there. So we set up in the circle, and I asked for. I'm going around about like what are our intentions, right? What are our group intentions? So I started and I talked about how I like to see something visual. Like visualizations aren't easy for me. I want to see something tangible, right? And as I say, I want to see something. I look up to the left sky, flashbulb, pop. Everybody's like, whoa, right when you said you wanted to see something, flashbulb pulp. And then another one came, just like confirmation for the people that didn't see it. And I was thinking, that is incredible. Oh, that works.
Jingle.
And then I thought of Adam, right? And he did send 2. He did send 2 blue. He called them blue lights. He sent 2 blue lights to show themselves.
Interesting. I might eat mushrooms when I come out.
No, you can't do that. No,
Really?
There's
That's
no
a rule?
drug. Yeah, there's no doobie smoking. No
What?
mushrooms.
Oh boy, this is a problem. Now we have a
You
problem.
have to take it off a night.
No, you're gonna have to take this up with the team. I'm out again.
You're out already? You're out already before it even started?
Yeah.
So anyway, I did the I got trying to get the singing bowl working, so we started the.
So you allowed singing bowls, but no doobies?
That's right.
Interesting.
And it wouldn't play. And it was, so I figured it's cold a little bit, so I had to rub it and like just, and then.
Do you guys wear swastikas when you go out?
See, what the fuck, dude? Come on. What is that all about?
Anti-doobie smoking?
So we play the singing bowl, look up, clear sky completely.
So you cloud bursted with the singing bowl?
I don't know if it was our intention or both, or the singing bowl.
You should have brought your singing bowl today so we could try and burst the fog. So
the other thing, I'm just ignoring you now. You're just being a tool. The other thing is we get to.
I don't
so
like
we met-
the anti-doobie smoking policy of your CSETI group. It's archaic.
I might be able to get you.
Okay. You know some people. You'll put in a good word for me.
No, we could just slide in the back door. Just keep it out of the circle. And I won't say anything.
There's a circle.
Oh, jeez. Well, yeah, that's how you line up around in the circle.
Interesting.
So before we went there, we met to carpool out to this place. And Celia had these galactic heritage cards. So it's like a deck of tarot cards, right? And it's from the Lisa Royal Holt. She was one of the original CSETI members.
56, right?
No,
72.
108. 108 in this deck.
Interesting.
Randomly ended up being 108, which is one of the more sacred numbers.
Oh, we know.
So guess what card I pull?
Lion.
What?
Lion.
No.
Flying lion. Dragonfly.
No. The dragonfly was from the last time I was. Just got to pull it up here. Number 64.
64.
Devotion to service.
Nice one. Crazy how those cards work sometimes.
Eh?
Yeah.
How bang on, like after I was doing that whole intention and trying to figure out how to.
How to ban pot
And it was the
smokers from your group.
Pleiades card. And it says present on it. I can't remember what that part of it means.
It means you need to stay present.
Devotion to service, present. Yeah, I don't know what that means. I should read about that. So, yeah, the other thing is the Pleiades were up in the middle of the sky that night.
Are the Pleiades the one by Orion's belt?
A little bit further up. Actually, Orion's belt was pretty bright too.
Yeah, I've been really noticing Orion in the mornings.
Yeah.
Oh, where I'm at, the stars in the morning are fucking crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know why. The city seems darker in the morning for some reason than it does in the evening.
Yeah.
Like the city's causes less of a
less
thing.
light. Yeah. So yeah, it was a pretty quiet night after that. I mean, we saw a couple satellite-y type things roaming around, and
that was the last one until
streaker.
March.
No, we'll go to next year in February if you want to come.
February?
Yeah. If you
What
can sober
weekend?
up in time.
If I can pass the drug test.
Pee in a cup.
Right on. That was a good adventure. I should have, thanks for the breakdown of the CSETI segment. I'll get us out of here with the jingle. Whoops. Wrong
Okay,
button.
there we go. We had the new moon, dark sky, which is great. Had a planned camping, pitched our tent, went back there for the night.
I think I'll wait till March.
Decided to read that. All right, whatever.
A little warmer.
And that shit starts happening. Okay, turn this down. So I got an email from one of our guys that come out, Jason. Actually, he's seen a couple Sasquatches too. We should get him in the studio. We should get a couple people in here to do a little CSETI talk. It'd be fun.
Absolutely.
So he says, hi, everyone. I just had the coolest thing happen to me like 20 minutes ago, and I wanted to share it with as many people as possible. So I'm hijacking this email thread. So I don't even know if he didn't send it to me. I'm sort of
Well, you're going
pulling
to
it out
say
of
his name
another-
and read it on the show.
Oh, Jason doesn't mind. He listens.
Okay.
He's probably going to start running another little local group. So if anybody in the local area wants to go out, there's lots of room. So at about 1:45 p.m. today,
As long
I
as
was
you can
northbound.
pass the drug test.
Yeah, exactly. I was northbound on Highway 2, just a little bit north of High River. Into the sky to my right, I see this huge silvery white object. It was long and had two humps. My first thought is daytime UFO. Sweet. But then I start doubting it as heading north and slowly descending. So I think to myself, it must be a plane. But it didn't look at all like a plane. And it was really big and not that far away. I don't know. It just didn't seem like a plane. So also now I'm thinking about it with some 20/20 hindsight, no lights on it at all. As big and as close as it was, I should have seen the flashing lights if it was a plane. So anyways, he says, I sent a message to it telepathically. If you are a UFO, please give me a sign. A flash, a light, or something. And nothing at all happens. At that point, I had to pass a car that was in the lane beside me, so I look away 4 seconds, if that. Look back, object gone. I look everywhere and it's not there. No way this was a plane that suddenly disappeared. It was huge and would be easily to spot again moving very slow. 110% not a plane. So the sign was disappearing. The super funny part is just minutes before I was thinking about the CE5 dates coming up that I needed to start getting out and doing them more. Next time I see a daytime UFO, I'll take pics and ask questions later.
Yeah, you should really just take the pictures right away.
It's hard.
It's
you don't
hard.
Want to ruin
You
the
can't,
moment. You don't want to ruin the moment.
And you need a real camera. Like, you know what I seen the other day, which looked really cool? I was actually going to text you as I went out right after sunset. And there was a fucking chemtrail, as you would call it, persistent contrail, as I might call it, going right over the mountains. And you could see where, like, the front of it looked like it would look like it was a torch.
Because the sun was hitting it?
Because the sun was going through the one end, so it was very bright orangish pink, and the back was still gray. It looked fucking amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Yeah.
I pulled out my iPhone to try and take a picture, and it didn't
Let me
work.
guess, it doesn't turn out.
No, it didn't
This is what
the lens is too small, right? Look at how small this lens is.
But this is the difficulty. Everybody's like, why aren't we seeing more of them? We have, cell phones everywhere. First of all, you don't want to ruin the moment. You don't want to, you don't want to turn away and then, it disappears or you miss something even crazier. You just want to focus on it the whole time. And second of all, even if you get a picture of something that seems anomalous to your eyes, on the phone, it just doesn't look the same.
Yeah, the iPhone doesn't. The phones don't catch it. They're good for up close pictures. That's it. They don't even really catch scenery well.
No, you're right. Yeah. You're right. And you take these mountains.
I didn't say anything. Right. You just did a gun motion at me, buddy. I seen that, Mr. I hate guns. I'm going to get into this one here. Do you have more?
Oh, I have a trip report for later.
Okay, I'm going to do it. Let's go to some social media jangle.
Bingo, bango, social media jingle. Don't forget to rate, comment, and or subscribe to the Grimerica newsletter. Bingo, bango, social media jingle. Don't forget to rate, comment, and or subscribe to the
God, I hate the fucking update on this fucking page manager app. It's so annoying. Not having a Facebook account and trying to run a Facebook page are trouble. So we got here from our buddy Addie Harvey to Grimerica. Trying to listen to the Richard Gage episode, and the background rustling and mic bumping noises are terrible. If you want people to donate to your show, then you have to make it sound more professional. It sounds like someone throwing up in the background and rustling sweet wrappers or something. If the content of this interview wasn't so good, I'd have given up listening altogether. And then I said, thanks for listening and thanks for your support. And he said, well, considering the audio problems, I'm giving value for value.
Nothing?
That's it.
What does that mean?
I guess it's because our audio is so... He needed an excuse not to support.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, that was pretty bad.
I think she was eating chips, but I can't do it.
No, she wasn't eating chips, I don't think. There was just... People don't realize, like people that haven't done a lot of podcasting and stuff. And I mean, we should probably do a better job at informing people like some guidelines, but... It's tough because you think people understand that, but people, if they haven't been doing it a lot, they don't understand that all this banging around in the background is going right through their Mac or their laptop mic and causing a ruckus, right?
Causing a ruckus.
Hey?
Where the heck did...
And the other thing is earphones. If people don't wear earbuds, then...
It's tough. It's tough to control.
So, I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to talk...
Well, I guess given the sound issues and it's not the first time, I'm giving value for value.
And what does that mean?
I don't know.
Does that mean nothing then?
I guess so.
Because there was
the reason I wanted to read it is because because our buddy Jared Jelly Drake came back. And I thought Jared might be missing and man overboard.
Yeah.
But he's back. He actually sent us our first package.
Nice.
Remember he sent us the flag and the candy from New Zealand, which now today we couldn't eat because we don't eat sugar.
So Are we had audio problems in the past? As I say that, my mic is messing up right now. I mean,
No, your mic sounds fine.
okay.
Yes,
So
So shitty
have
headphones.
we had audio
Well, every
problems
once in a while,
in the past?
every once in a while, we got to guess that.
No, but what were the other ones then? I mean, people should give us feedback on this because
Yeah, he didn't mention. Most of the comments below that say that our stuff is pretty fine most of the time.
yeah. But the challenging part is in the middle of something like that. I mean, especially with one like that, that's with 3 people. It's very quick. It's been hard to
Like
get
we'd
them
love to send them
scheduled
all
in.
out headsets and stuff like that, but we don't.
You can't. Yeah.
That's what Buddy does, right?
Yeah.
He sends out a fucking $20 headset to all his interviews. So
Yeah.
we can
And he's
barely
like,
afford
just
to
plug
keep the
this
lights
in,
on.
right? Is it a headset or just earbuds?
I think it's earbuds.
You might have a little mic on it too. You never know, but that might be hard to set up for people.
Jared Jelly Drake came in, said that's obviously valuable feedback that these guys desperately need to continue on their self-funded, self-research, self-administered, self-started in their spare time, put the kids to bed early, wake up in the middle of the night to interview someone on the other side of the world who sometimes doesn't show up.
Yeah. Well, that's bad.
Podcast. They will take it on board and use it to increase the quality of the show that is freely available to us all. I know them personally, and I can guarantee they will do their best. But in saying that, we are all holding our breath waiting for your podcast to come out. And he goes on for a bunch of other stuff beyond that, but I'll leave it at that. And we will do our best to address that.
It's really hard in the moment to stop
You can't
that
stop people.
and say, listen, you're being too loud. Like sometimes you can. It depends if we have a legitimate problem with somebody that we kind of know. But if it's somebody like that, it's very difficult to say that. What?
Someone in the chat said they miss your lip smacking sounds before we got the gate. Remember way back in those days?
Those days?
We never even used to have a fucking gate.
I know.
You hear me clicking the pen.
Yeah.
You smacking your mouth.
And we thought we had good audio back then, too.
Yeah.
I know.
Turns out we're shit.
Yeah. Anyways, thanks for the good feedback.
What else do I got? Oh, I'm going to phase out the speak pipe
Okay.
and go with the phone number.
Okay.
So we're going to do we'll record the voicemail later. We should record a voicemail together. So we're going to ditch the speak pipe. People don't like doing it on the website, clearly, because we've only got I was on the speak pipe account the other day, and it was some guy lobbying to come on the show was the message that we got.
Really?
But it's we've got 22 messages in 3 years of having speak pipe. So, it's like $20 a month. So I'm just going to cut SpeakPipe out and try this phone out for a while and see if we need. And the beauty about the phone is that I'm thinking is you could text it. So we have a text and voicemail line.
Okay, cool.
But
the other way. Oh, so what happened there?
Holy fuck.
What the fuck's happening?
See, this is what happens in the middle of an episode. The audio just pops and something completely changes.
Yeah, something happened.
And it's so how do we deal with this? How do we troubleshoot this one and get value for value?
What just happened?
Do we just scrap the whole intro? I mean,
It's like something on your gate just gave way or something.
how's that for lip smacking sounds now?
Sounds pretty good, actually.
Huh. I don't know what happened there. It seemed to come back though. That was weird.
Someone's got some serious.
That was probably fucking Addy. Maybe he's a witch. Anyway, where was I? That was fucking weird. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. So we're going to do the phone number.
No, I was going to say the chats. Like if people want to also get a hold of us, it's easy. Jump in the chats. They can direct message us even. People do that all the time.
How do you get it to show your phone number? Oh, here it is. So the call in and text line, the new call in.
And we'll put this in the show notes.
Exactly. The new call in text line for the Grimerica show is 1-403-702-6083.
Can we come up with a good
Voicemail?
No, a good what that? Can we letter that out?
Ooh, let's see.
No, you won't have to do it now, but
702. So PQ. It's going to be tough with O. The zeros make it tough.
what's a 0?
Could we make the O a 0?
Yeah, just make the 0 and O.
Interesting.
That might be difficult for people they might have to explain a bit too much.
I'd like to know what popped.
It's still going back and forth. I know something's wrong here.
Sounding great anymore.
Something's wrong. Something just switched up. Anyways, let's get this thing done before we lose value.
where value is pouring out the window as we speak. Okay, what else you got?
Well, do you want to keep going on the support thing, or I got a trip report?
Yes, do that. Grimerica.ca/support. What? I don't know what the fuck that was.
We do the trip report.
Try unplugging your mic and plugging it back in.
let's see.
I'll play a jingle.
Okay.
Everything's on.
American Trip Report.
Check. Oh, that's
Not
better.
like that. Good
All
as
right.
new.
So how do you just unplug shit and plug it back in? Hi, my name is Bradley Knight, and I'm from a little town near Sarnia, Ontario called Inwood. I'm 26 years old and have been listening to you guys for a year now. And I wanted to tell you boys about an out-of-body experience I had about 6 years ago when I was living in my uncle's camper down by the river. No, he didn't say that. Down on my luck and not doing well in life. One day I was smoking weed like I always do, chilling in the camper. It was windy as fuck, so when I opened the door, it would get blown open. I finished a bowl and went to step outside, and the wind blew the door so hard it slipped out of my hand, then swung back and hit me in the temple part of the head. Next thing I remember is being in a thick pink fog and 3 of my father's close friends in front of me. But they were not my father's friends. I knew they were beings from the other side. Are you done?
The fucking EQ popped. That's what broke.
Really?
Yeah, if I turn the bypass of the EQ on, you sound okay. Keep talking.
Check. I don't know. I don't know anymore. It's still real fuzzy.
It sounds better with the bypass.
Okay. So this is a pretty creepy story here. So he says he knew they weren't his father's friends, but they were beings from the other side. They had picked forms that I would recognize so that I wouldn't be scared. They started to tell me about my future and said that everything will be okay, not to give up and that life would get better. At the end of our conversation, they told me as proof that I wasn't crazy and it wasn't just a crazy brain fuck, that weed would be legal in about 5 years. Everything else they told me about, they only told me that weed would be legal because I needed to remember the event exactly 5 years later. So last October, I burned my hands in a kitchen fire and spent 13 days in the hospital. I felt the fire was a wake-up call and made a deal with myself to be a better human in general. And while in the hospital, I had Wi-Fi, so I started watching podcasts and found Duncan Trussell on JRE. That led me down the path to Ram Dass, and my true spiritual path began. I was into conspiracy as a kid, so when I found TFH, I found your show, THC, and other people who have helped me to understand the true nature of the universe, that we are all one. Sorry that was so long, and I didn't even get into the details. I want to thank you both for helping me on my path. I'll be riding my motorcycle to Lloydminster to see a family sometime this spring or summer. So if you want to have me on for a talk about my experience on the other side, I would be honored. And I also have a theory that Canada is Noah's Ark for cultures, for the NWO. And like the Trudeau is Castro's son idea. Much love, Bradley.
Is my mic even working?
Yep.
Thanks for the email, Bradley.
Absolutely.
And maybe we should get you on for and you can explain that a little bit more detail. Always very interested in those experiences and how they shift people's perspective as well. And then I'm assuming 5 years later, pot became legal.
Where's he driving through?
I just closed it down.
To Lloydminster.
Yeah, Lloydminster. Probably from Sarnia.
Holy fuck.
Was that a long drive?
Yeah.
Oh, Lloydminster's on the...
It's up by Saskatchewan on
Yeah.
the border there, yeah. God damn it. These mics are driving me crazy now. I swear I'm coming through your mic and not mine. I'm not sure, though. Actually, that doesn't sound too bad there.
So thanks for everybody putting up with our testing as we do this. Everything
Testing on the
was
fly.
fine. Everything was fine, but you know, what can you do, right?
I'm pretty sure it's the EQ. I'll have to bust it off of
Okay,
there.
let's do the UFO jingle then, and we'll wrap this up.
Darren and Graham are going deep.
Got to talk about CAC too, probably, right?
Right.
It's a profound UFO quote of the week. Words to ponder and critique. It's a profound UFO quote of the week.
From their questions, I could tell they had a good idea of what the saucers are. One officer admitted they did, but he wouldn't say anymore. And that was a commercial pilot after questioning by an intelligence officer in 1950. Man,
1950?
it still blows me away how far back these go. Okay, I'll do another one. We all know that UFOs are real. All we need to ask is, where did it come from? That was Captain Edgar D. Mitchell, Apollo 14 astronaut, 1971.
The list of everything ever said about a UFO ever continues.
Yeah. So I do another one?
One more, sure.
I have absolutely no idea where the UFOs come from or how they are operated, but after 10 years of research, I know they are something from outside our atmosphere. Dr. James E. McDonald, professor of atmospheric physics, University of Arizona, 1967. Actually, I want to look into this guy's work a little bit more. Maybe we can read some of his work on our Black Budget feed.
Why don't we have him on the show?
Oh, he's long gone.
He's dead?
Yeah.
It's too bad.
Let's try.
Why is that funny?
Well, we could try have him on if you want to communicate. We could have a medium on.
Maybe we could channel
communicate
him.
with him. We could channel him. Maybe. Yeah, let's try that.
If we're going to do that, we should have Napoleon Hill on too. Could we bring in the same psychic and do like 3 interviews in a day?
That's a good idea. We should. That's a good news. A psychic podcast
Yeah.
or interviewing like dead famous people.
There
We're
you
on to
have it.
something.
We're on to something. Let us know if you know a good psychic channeler. We got a show idea.
Medium, I think, is the
A medium?
right, yeah.
Oh, is that like saying midget?
No.
It's frowned upon.
No, Jesus.
That one hits you especially close to home, doesn't it?
Midget?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't care.
No?
Dwarf, on the other hand.
Ooh.
No.
Huh. I thought dwarf isn't dwarf better?
I dressed as Bilbo. I mean, come on.
I know.
As
You
if
told
I
us
care.
it was Frodo. You said it's Frodo.
Oh, Frodo.
Yeah. We know. You tell us every chance you get. Anyway, what else we got? Support the show, Grimerica.ca/support. Check out the radio, Grimerica.ca/FM.
Contact at the cabin. You want to talk about
Contact at the cabin. Yeah, we're going to have Randall on, I think, in February. We should have him on for an episode again.
that? So we're meeting Randall Carlson for 10 days in May in Colorado near Pagosa Springs, and we're invited a bunch of people. Everybody's welcome.
That's right.
There's some room left still.
Yeah,
there's
there's
three
seats left.
different separate weekends, and
Yeah, it all takes place May 17th to 27th. There's a website,
do you want to say it?
hdtravel.me, right?
Yep.
And there's the email is CAC 2019 at hdtravel.me. Basically, you go out there, you're going to get to go on some tour. You're going to stay in the same house. It's a giant estate, 122-acre property, huge space, game rooms, and all that sort of fun stuff. It's got a couple of kitchens. Randall's going to stay there. Graham and myself will stay there. We're going to do some outings with Randall, one with each group, go and check some stuff out. We're going to probably, there's so much stuff to check out in that area. I'm sure we'll end up doing something at the Four Corners at some point. Graham's going to do some ESETI stuff, probably some D&D playing, I'm sure, at some point. Randall's going to give some lectures. Just a bunch of good times.
Yeah.
And Colorado's a legal state, too, for the pot smokers. You won't be allowed in the ESETI event if you're smoking pot, probably, but you could... It's worth coming down. There's a bunch of spots left, at least half anyway. Get in there, get them soon before we all start going to other pools and getting people from there. We'd like to have as many Grimericans there as we can. But I think, Randall's getting ready to, we're probably going to announce it on Randall's channels in the next week or two. So get your deposit down at least. And
we wanted to get as many of our listeners out there as possible who want to meet up and before we start opening it up.
Yeah, so we're probably down to the last week or so of that before it's opened up, and I'm assuming it's going to go fast as soon as that happens. So, by the way, that ticket does come with your breakfasts and your lunches and transportation.
Yeah,
not from Denver. You go to Denver, you're on your own.
Just
we'll get you the daily transportation and all that. And if you fly to Pagosa, or not Durango, if you're in Durango, we'll pick you up. Anyway. Get some fucking tickets for that. Support the show. Sign up for the newsletter. Review this shit. All that good stuff. And sorry for the loss of value there for a few minutes when the audio hiccup came through. Other than that, enjoy the chat with the one and only Olav Phillips.
All right, we've got Olav Phillips back in Grimerica. I think it was like 3 years ago, at least, when he was on. He's a conspiracy researcher and writer. He's publisher of the Paranoia magazine and the podcast as well. I don't know, it focuses on all kinds of stuff. I think last time we talked about some secret space program stuff, as well as his favorite conspiracy, which is now eluding me. Something 3. What is it again, Olav?
Alternative 3.
Alternative 3. Yeah, I had it in front of me and then I missed it. So yeah, but we'll talk about all kinds of stuff now. Welcome back to the show, buddy.
Thanks, man. Why did it take 3 years? I love you guys.
I can't. Well, when I looked at it the other day, I was like, "There's no way it's been 3 years." But yeah, it's been 3 years, man. I love it.
Too long.
And so much has changed since then, man. Like,
I know.
Go ahead.
We haven't
Darren.
even done a black budget show yet, which is weird because we've been talking about doing one since we started the black budget. I think you were the first guy to email me and say, "Hey, let's do a black budget show."
What? The black budget is the best because it's black and dark and nobody knows what it is.
Yeah, we can get super crazy in that one.
Oh yeah. Well, there was a screw up once. You guys know what the Aurora is, right?
Yes.
The Aurora aircraft?
I swear I saw a contrail from the Aurora flying to California one day.
I have seen the Aurora twice. I have seen the pulse detonation engine.
No way.
Donut on a twice. Yeah, twice. Well, possibly 3, but 2 I know for sure. And the reason that we know what the Aurora is called is because some doofus, when they did the Air Force budget, didn't black box that out. So when the budget came through, all the conspiracy guys go get the budget and they're all trolling through it, looking for whatever, and they didn't redact the name of the program. So it said Aurora program, and then like some god awful amount of money, and everybody goes, "What's that? What's that? What's that?" So, it went from there, but they didn't redact it. So, they mess up sometimes, but Air and Space Week, they go through it, and everybody's like going through the budget trying to find stuff.
That's been like 10 or 15 years now. Whatever happened with that? Like, why is it sort of quieted down? What did the Aurora end up being? Like, you saw it twice, and it's not just a black triangle. Isn't it more of like just a high-tech fighter plane kind of thing?
No, it's more like a chevron. It's like an elongated triangle. I think what happened, you have to excuse me, I have a bit of a cough tonight. I think what happened is that they found a better engine. The engine
Then
on
that
the
pulse
the
one.
deal- yeah, the pulse detonation engine. So basically, the way a pulse detonation engine works is that on the back you've got this kind of wedge-shaped plane, and on the back of it kind of pumps fuel out over the back, and then it's ignited somehow. There are stories about how it's ignited. One says it has dual tail fins, and there's a laser that runs between the tail fins, and when the fuel passes over the laser detonates it, and it spurts it out, and that's how you get that popping. And I actually saw one at dusk, and I actually could see the flashing across the sky. You don't really see it as much during the day, but I saw it at dusk. So it's fairly dark, and so I could actually see the flashing as it went across the sky. But I think that these black triangles that we're seeing again, I think that's the real deal, and I think they've operationalized those.
So
they have a different kind of engine.
So the black triangles, some of them are the Aurora. Then they're just a little more elongated opposed to, or they're a separate program altogether. Yeah.
Separate program. Yeah. I think what happened was they found a more efficient, faster engine, and I think that they killed off the Aurora program.
Oh wow!
They probably still have some and do test. It's like anything, right? The Air Force or the Canadian Air Force, in your guys' case, they'll have a black project and they'll say, okay, we'll build 5 of them. So they'll go build 5 of them, and then they'll fly them around for a while, and then they'll say, well, we don't need them anymore, so we'll use them for testing, shockwave propagation or something, versus actually operationalizing them.
Yeah, they'll still.
But I think these black triangles. I think these black triangles are the real deal. I think they've operationalized those, and they're not TR-3Bs, that's for sure.
No, why is that? So is that just a? Is that just
a drone?
The TR-3Bs are drones. Yeah,
I believe so. Yeah. No, these are piloted. There are little people in there.
Yeah.
Little people, like midgets.
Well, I mean, they could be like 6 feet. Well, that like the SR-71, they had okay. So when I was a kid, right, my family, I come from an Air Force family, and I really wanted to go in, and I wanted to be a pilot. I wanted to fly an A-10 Warthog, and I'm 6'3", right? And the max height for an A-10 pilot is like 6'1". So they definitely have like height restrictions. Yeah, I didn't fit in the Kevlar bathtub, so I wouldn't have been able to fly it. So sad.
That's too bad.
Well, I mean, it's the first airplane built around a gun. They took the gun in the nose, and they built the plane around the gun. They're like, we really want that gun.
Didn't they put those back in service recently? Like that's one of the probably the most utilized aircrafts, right? That's the Warthog, isn't it?
Oh yeah, no, they definitely put it back into service. The problem with those things though is that they fire depleted uranium rounds, so you're toxifying all the ground. Every time you fire a barrage into something, you're irradiating the ground.
So you focus on high tech crafts and stuff too. That's part of the thing that you like to research. Is there anything new in that front that you're looking at?
As far as aircraft,
yeah,
I've been following the triangles. I think the triangles are really fascinating. And it's funny because like I have a Google alert, a Google News alert, and what it looks for is mysterious plane or UFO or whatever, and then it sends me an email once the trigger trips. And 99% of all the really good hits I get on that triangular aircraft come out of UFO sightings. Like everybody thinks it's a damn UFO, and it's not. I mean, it's just a fighter. Well, it's not a fighter exactly. It's a multi-role aircraft. But I think what it actually has, and I've been watching these things for a while now, like the news reports and and looking at the photos that people are taking. And I'm pretty sure at this point that it's actually utilizing what's called an aerospike engine.
Aerospike?
I think that's why aerospike, yeah. And I think that's why they replaced the Aurora, is because the aerospike is like way more efficient.
And you had a sighting
How
of
does
one
it
of those
run?
yourself, right?
I have seen the triangular ones, but at a distance. Not. The truth is, I've seen all kinds of wacky stuff. It's funny. You do like podcasts and interviews and radio shows and whatever, and everybody always wants to know, oh, what have you seen? It's like, you guys probably know this, that if you chase this stuff, you end up seeing all sorts of kooky things because you put yourself where they are. And if you put yourself where the phenomena is, then you will experience it. Right?
Hopefully. I mean, I think it's easier said than done.
I disagree with that. I wanted to see some weird planes, right? And I'm a pretty grounded guy, so I'm very much it's piloted by people, not aliens, and that's
for the most
some
part.
of it's sure, but I think most of it's people. And one day I said to myself, well, you know what? I want to go see some weird planes. And my friends were going to ESETI, the Gilliland Ranch in southern Washington. And I said, well, I want to go. And they're like, okay. So I went. And, it was about 4 or 5 hours of that stuff. I saw all kinds of crazy stuff. But I know from research and just from being involved in this, that if you go to ESETI, you see weird stuff. So if you go there, if you want to see it, go there. You'll see it.
So here, let me get your. Go ahead.
Is that the one in Oregon?
Yeah, that's the one that Michael's been to a couple times, and yeah.
It's actually in Washington State. It's right across the border.
Well, we'll have to. I think we're gonna head down there. Maybe in the next couple of years, we'll have to get down there.
Well, let me know. We'll have a barbecue.
Fuck yeah!
It'll be fun. Hell yeah! But it's. If you want to see a ghost, you have to go to a haunted house, right? And, if you want to see experimental aircraft, then you have to go where they fly. And Trout Lake, where ESETI is one of those spots. And, predominantly the air traffic comes out of the southeast, Mount Adams.
Yeah.
It comes out of the southeast and it heads north. It actually arcs over your head. And so, you're watching it come out of the southeast. And funny enough, if you draw a straight line from where Trout Lake is, southeast, you hit Nellis. So, at least in that proximity. So, the idea that these things are coming out of Area 51 and they're flying over. And it makes sense that they turn north there because, it's polar. So they're going over the poles. So
why over the poles?
Well, what's on the other side of the poles? Russia. What else?
So they're just spying on Russia, you think?
Or they are.
I'm sure they do. Well, it's funny. I had a hell of a time getting it translated. I finally found this guy who could translate it for me, but a friend of mine had clued me into this weird radio transmission that these guys had picked up in Russia. And they were Russian nationals that had actually picked it up, and it was on a military airband, but it was in the clear. It wasn't encrypted or anything. And it was basically a communication between a MiG-29 pilot and the Air Defense Control Center that he was assigned to. And the guy, I think he was a major, and he was up at cruising altitude. And they said that they had a radar track on something adjacent to him. So they told him to go find it. So he turns the plane around and goes after it. And to him, it's like a high-speed light because it's so far in the distance. But they were calling it a drone, and there were two of them, and apparently it was running right along the front. And he chased it as long as he could, but he couldn't keep up with it. And then eventually it crossed over the border, and he couldn't pursue it. But it was going real high and really fast. So, I'm sure that they send them over too. We send them over. Everybody sends the drones all around. That's how this works, right? But, everybody spies on everybody, right?
So let me get your take on this. I heard you talking about like CSETI type stuff, CE5 intentional communications and contact and stuff like that. And, my view is very similar to yours, that a lot of it is man-made, a lot of it is black budget stuff. And I think it's from various organizations and programs, really, like various kind of secret space programs. kind of like that.
I agree.
That Iron Sky part where, they end up all the nations kind of have their own like secret craft show up in space there at the same time.
Right. I love that part.
That's pretty funny.
What? You have one too?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. So, but when we go out there and we do intentionally, like we practice these CE5 things up north of Calgary here, and we do see some crazy shit. Like we get in a group and we meditate and we put our love and intention out there and shit and follow the protocols. But I'm not necessarily convinced that it's all alien either. Like, do you think that the black budget stuff, the secret space program stuff, is advanced enough to know that groups like this are out there and they can show up as well?
No, I don't think the aircraft knows you're there.
or
I think what it is that
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think the people that run the aircraft know you're there. And one of the things you have to remember is that originally with the A-12 program, which was a predecessor to the SR-71, right? It was silver. I think it was like 5 feet longer and went like 20% faster or something. Yeah. Well, when the A-12 came out, when it would streak across the sky, I mean, it's a silver object. A lot of people thought it was UFOs. And there were a lot of sky watches that were organized to go watch these things because they were convinced, our alien brothers were coming to visit. And the KGB actually sent people into those groups and infiltrated them to attend the sky watches because they knew they were experimental aircraft. And then the FBI and the CIA put people in the groups to watch the KGB guys. But what the CIA figured out as part of the A-12 program is that it worked exceptionally well for them to tell people, oh, no, that is a UFO. So they would actually send people out and go, yeah, that's a UFO. So I think sometimes, I know the CE5 stuff does work. I don't know why, but if it's the human stuff, I don't think that they can detect you. If they're at like 100,000 feet, I don't think that they can pinpoint you and go, these guys are projecting, I want to see you vibes. So I think it might be more that somebody is monitoring you and knows you're going out there and wants to give you a show so you can report back that it's a UFO, potentially. Not necessarily.
No, but it does strike me as a way they could test things out. They could test what
absolutely
what's reported, what's seen, I mean, I do feel like that's a little too conspiratorial for me, but I'm not putting it out. I'm not throwing it out, because it could be ETs too. I mean, we've seen low flying fucking silent craft and all kinds of crazy shit. A lot of flash bulbs.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you think maybe the CSETI stuff is just sense. You think maybe that CSETI stuff is just sort of like controlled disclosure in a way, or like or sort of like fake disclosure where they want? Would that mean they've got to the next level where they can read Graham's mind and they know that he wants to see a UFO, so they send a drone there?
In the case of ESETI, I think they know that a lot of people go there to see UFOs. I mean, when you're actually there, when one of these objects flies over your head, and I mean, they're quite high and they're quite fast, a lot of them. I mean, everybody's screaming beam ship and jumping up and down. And I think they know that, and I think in some cases, I think they play to it. In other cases, I think that it's just the air corridor, that's just how you get there. And he lucked out and happened on a mess of land that's below where it flies. I mean, you guys live in a big city. When somebody flies into Calgary or Ottawa or whatever, you're flying in on an air corridor that they have predetermined routes. I think he just lives under what predetermined route. Now, what I can't explain is I'm sitting there and it's dark and whatever, and I watched what looked like a garage door up on the side of a mountain. Now that I can't explain so well, right? And I saw a object that looked like the Stargate from Stargate SG-1, hanging in midair, stuff going in but not going through, stuff coming out but not going through. I can't explain that.
What do you mean coming out but not going through?
Okay, well, so you've got this flat thing hanging in midair, and there's stuff coming out of it.
Oh, okay.
But it's hanging in midair. I can see both sides of it, right? Because I'm perpendicular to it, so I can see both sides of it. I'm not watching things go through it. I'm just watching stuff come out of it. That was weird. That was
like a Stargate.
Yeah, it looked exactly like a Stargate. And then I saw Bigfoot. I mean, it's just a weird place. It's just a bizarre.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, like, the high strangeness part of it is I mean, the corridor, it makes sense to me as well, but there's also the sort of portal aspect and the high strangeness that happens there. So
it's real.
We'll talk about the Bigfoot. I mean, I don't necessarily want to just pick you over all your sightings and stuff, but explain the Bigfoot thing as well, if you could.
Okay, so Mount Adams is pretty damn high, right? And when we were probably, 15 miles away from it, and I think it's above 10,000 feet high. And we were sitting there at a table. And I'm playing Tetris on my phone. Because, the thing about ESETI is that when you go during the day, it's like super duper boring. There's nothing to do. You just kind of sit there, and it's a big field, right? And so I'm sitting there playing Tetris, and my friend is sitting next to me. It was actually Larry Overman from Ghost Mine. He's sitting next to me, and he's just staring at the mountain. And he starts elbowing me in the side, and I'm like, "What? Leave me alone! I'm playing Tetris." And he's like, "No! You got to see this." I'm like, "No, I really don't. I gotta play my Tetris. I'm doing good." And he goes, "No, really, you got to see this." I'm like, "F off! I'm playing Tetris." And so finally, he hit me really hard, and I was like, "Okay, what?" And so I look, and there are these two. They were the size of ants. Going up the side of the snowfield, and we watched him for over 45 minutes. And I went and got my friend Chris and dragged him over and made him watch it. And we're all sitting there watching it. And I watched these two. They were big enough I could see their gait. I watched them for 45 or 50 minutes climb up an almost vertical snowfield. And then at the top, they stood there, and they were silhouetted against the sky. And then they walked down into the crevasse. And so Chris is an engineer like me, but he's better at math. So he did the geometry to figure out the distance, how far we were, the angle that we saw them, how big they would have been. And I think he figured out that they should have been about 10 feet tall or something like that. And yeah, it was bizarre. It was truly bizarre.
So many people have Sasquatch stories from that spot.
Where's this?
Yeah,
This is Oregon again?
This is at ESETI still, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't see it up close, but I mean, I'm 100%. Dude, I studied anthropology. I mean, I know what a Gigantopithecus is. That's exactly what I saw.
We're going to need one of our U.S. listeners to bring a gun to the ESETI.
No, Darren, no. Yeah, hopefully you can't get in there with a gun.
It's also too far. It would be, you're talking about miles and miles away. What I do want to do, though, I actually had an idea, and I approached a guy about doing it. And he seemed hip to the idea as long as I paid for the gas. Is that one of these nights, when this stuff is going on and we're down in the ground, I want to get a guy in a Cessna to do loops around Mount Adams.
See what happens.
And I want to send somebody up in a Cessna at night when this stuff actually starts occurring. Because the guy's planes, he can put his plane in Hood River or Portland or whatever, and he can be in that mountain in about 15 minutes. So we can just sit there, and then once we start seeing these portals and crap appearing, call him up, and he'll fly out and just fly in rings around with somebody with a HD camera and fly rings around the mountain.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Do that with a drone?
Yeah. It's too far for a drone. It's too high. You need, you're talking thousands and thousands of feet. You need an actual airplane. So I think it'd be quite illuminating to see what this stuff looks like from the air.
That must be fairly cheap to put together, no?
Yeah, I don't think it'll be too bad. Probably a couple $100 in gas. If the guy's still willing to do it. I mean, you'd have to do it during the spring or the summer when the weather's better, because you don't want him to get thermals and stuff up there, get bounced around trying to fly around this mountain. Because
Or you
flying
don't
around
want to
mountains
just
can be
get.
very dangerous.
What if he gets shot down?
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. But I mean, it's a risk. But did you guys ever see that guy, that lunatic? He was an English guy. He was a game show host, and he was doing a show about Area 51. He paid this guy in a Cessna 172 to fly him into Area 51. Did you guys ever see that?
I think I did. It was a while ago, though, right? 10 years? 12 years, maybe?
Quasar?
Yeah, it was more than 10 years. And so they're flying in, and standard procedure is that they send up a pair of F-16s to go meet you, right? And so these F-16s, I mean, they can't even slow themselves down enough to match speed with a Cessna, And so they're flying in circles around the Cessna, and the jet wash is bouncing it all around, and the guy's panicking and screaming in the back of the airplane.
That's awesome.
It's they're going to shoot us down. No, I don't think so. They're just scaring you. But it's a weird place.
I wanted to bring up, give you lots of chance to talk about your magazine and your podcast and stuff, because you guys do.
Okay.
I read some of your articles on your website. I mean, it's fascinating stuff. Sticking with the UFO thing, that Publish and Perish: The Mysterious Body Count of Ufology and the Darker Side of Conspiracy Research.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that. You want to talk a little bit about that? I mean, it's pretty mind blowing, and maybe give some people an idea of the original research that you guys do there.
Well, so yeah, about Publish and Perish. So what it is that, for a lot of people, when you listen to a podcast or you go listen to a radio show and these guys come on and you'll have somebody talking about this research that they did about whatever. And, I'm like everybody else, right? I listen to this stuff too. I'm a Grimerica fan. I wear my shirt.
Thanks, buddy.
We'll send you a new shirt.
Yes,
Take
please.
a shot.
But, they listen and they hear about people, or they hear these stories that people tell you. And you think to yourself, well, that's kind of cool. That sounds awful fun. And boy, oof. But the reality is that, some of these guys, they don't come back. That they go out and they do this kind of research and they don't come back. And, I thought it would be an interesting article to write to talk about, what happens with these guys when they don't come back. And there are a bunch of very famous cases. You have Jim Keith. Jim Keith was a big-time conspiracy guy back in the 90s. He was the author of Black Helicopters Over America and Biowarfare in America and a whole bunch of stuff. And he actually wrote a book on Alternative 3 as well. But, he went to Burning Man. He fell off a stage, broke his knee, and then he went in for orthopedic surgery. This is lightweight. We're just going to, give you a little bit of anesthesia and put your knee back together kind of surgery. And they gave him the anesthesia and he didn't wake up. And then not long after that, Ron Bonds, the guy from the Illuminati Press that actually published all of Keith's stuff, he goes to a Mexican restaurant in Atlanta with his wife and their friends, and they all chow down, and two of them, I think, ordered the same salad he did, and apparently he got E. coli, and he was dead within 48 hours.
And didn't Keith talked about his potential upcoming death, I think, or something, didn't he?
Yeah, Keith has reported. I should ask his daughters about this, but Keith is reported to have told his friends. I know one guy did tell me this, that he actually heard this from Keith, that he said, if they put me under, I'm not coming out. And he didn't. And Ron Bonds, he died, and it's just Danny Castellero, the guy who figured out the octopus. He was found dead in a motel room. There was another guy who
get found dead with like multiple blunt force trauma things. That vaccine dude.
There was a guy. Yeah, I just watched a thing about him. There's a guy that he supposedly committed suicide by shooting himself in the back of the head twice.
Yeah.
It's in the article. There's another guy. He was a UFO researcher. I had never heard of him, but he did a presentation, and he walked up to the podium, and he puts this Diet Coke on the podium, and he says, excuse me before I start. He drinks some of the Diet Coke. He had opened it. He drinks some of the Diet Coke. They drop the lights to do his slide deck, and then there's no sound, and somebody hears this thud. And they turn the lights on, and he's convulsing, and there's this white powder all over his mouth, and he's choking to death. So these things do happen. We don't hear a lot about it anymore. But I thought it'd be a very interesting thing to actually say, no, some people, I think every researcher eventually gets threatened in some way or warned. But some of them, they don't come back.
You think it's just they're stumbling?
So I thought it was an interesting article.
You think they're just stumbling on a thread that's just too serious to overlook? Because you're researching all this stuff. You've been interested in following this stuff since you're like 8 years old. So, what do you ever worry about that? Do you try and keep yourself safe on June 24th? Because isn't that the crazy thing that?
A wise man once gave me a piece of advice. He said that if you want to do this kind of stuff and stay safe, right, that it's all about where you get your info from and how you analyze the info. So I get my info from that source, that method. Basically, I use the method that it was suggested to me, and I haven't had any problem since, but it's all about the method.
And how many of these guys passed on June 24th? That's fucking crazy.
Well, sure. And there's another funny thing. I actually realized this when I was looking into the guy who was part of Ultra that died, Frank Olson. There's a manual that the CIA has on assassinations, and one of the things in the manual, I forget who wrote it, but the guy was like a magician or something, and it's a whole assassination manual. And one of the things that they said in the manual is that you have to, if you're gonna kill somebody, you have to hit them in the head in a certain spot, and then you have to throw them out of a building that's higher than X numbers of stories high. Right? I forget, it's like 11. The building has to be greater than 11 stories high.
For it to be almost a guaranteed death, yeah.
Yeah, you have to make sure that he's going to crack his head open when he hits the pavement. And so one day I went and looked at a couple of these, where it's these weird suicides, and it's like, oh. And there's a documentary called Wormwood that's pretty good that talks about Frank Olson, and they did it in there too. And it was kind of interesting. It's like, okay, well, why don't we go look at weird suicides where people jump out of buildings that are higher than 11 stories, and we're hitting the left side of the head. It's like, oh, there's a couple, and you can start to see the patterns of how these things work, right? But, again, if you don't want to be one of those people that jumps out of an 11-story building, apparently, there are ways that you can research things that keep you safe. And I don't really want to leave this mortal coil. So again, I have a method that I use.
Huh. You should
Is that just not pointing the finger too specifically?
Yeah, it's the source of the information, right? Where you get the info from. And it's also, knowing when to not really hang that finger pointing on, when to say, okay, this is something you got to let go. And it's very hard. There are certain things that I find very fascinating, but if you push too hard in certain things, bad things happen. And so, I won't go down that road. There are subjects that I'm extremely fascinated by, but it wouldn't be good for my longevity to research them.
Would you be willing to give examples of the subjects without going much further than that?
Can you make me a list?
make us a list.
Can you give me a list? I want to go find some people to have them on. It's hard. It's hard to say. There are just certain things that you don't really want to discuss.
Kevin Pizzagate Spacey.
Like what?
What with that? Spacey delivering pizza.
Yeah, Kevin Spacey delivering pizza to reporters when he's about to get arraigned for sexual assault.
I love that humor.
Yeah. But, I think a lot of it really comes down to, again, picking your battles and saying, okay, well, I want to do this. So how do I, it's incumbent upon me to keep myself safe. So I want to research a subject, and, you just have to draw borders around it and go, well, what's served by me going too far down that road? There are people that will go all the way at all costs, and that's who that article is written about. Then there are people that are like, I want to shine a light on this, but I don't need to go down all the way down the rabbit hole, right?
Yeah, but shining a light on there's an occult aspect to this too. I mean, the September 20 or the June 24th thing is unbelievable. I mean, you list all the people that are into this that have died on June 24th, and it's like way beyond coincidence. I mean, and what did you say? I think
it's true.
And June 24th was significant because I'm trying to find it again.
Oh, I can't remember.
There was a religious. Oh, John the Baptist. It was the feast day for John the Baptist.
John the Baptist, right? Yeah.
So
well, and you also look at 9/11, right? September 11th, right? That obviously I'm in the U.S. We had a really bad thing happen that day, and I think everybody who was around when that happened, we all remember it. It was our Pearl Harbor in some ways. But the reality is that a whole lot of things happen on September 11th. The Pentagon opened on September 11th. I mean, it's I don't know. I've never figured out exactly why, these dates, why they care so much, if they really believe this stuff, or if they're just trying to mask it by using it, or what the motivation is behind, like June the 12th or 9/11 or whatever. But it
seems to be something on that 9/11 one, because the Matrix is full of fucking symbology, and 9/11's in there too. And I think that's more to do with with 9/11 the day than it is, people get all excited and say it's fucking proof that people knew 9/11 was going to happen. I think it's more about that number's important.
Okay. Yeah, the date is important. The date itself. Yeah. And it's, you can see it. I mean, there are these groupings of things that always happen around specific dates. And I know the occult reason why, right?
Why? For the power? Why? Because of the power? Or why do you think it is? What's the reason then?
So in occultism, right, that if you do something that's aligned to like a specific occult power day, right, then you're magnifying the power of what you do. So, for example, I'm driving, so I don't have it in front of me, but let's say that you pick Walpurgis, right? and you want to do, and you align something that could be seen as a blood sacrifice, and on a mass scale, like you're gonna do something, and you're gonna start a war, right? And a lot of people are gonna die. So you align it to, Walpurgis, because it's a sacrificial night, right? So you start the war on that day because the deaths of the people in the war amplify the power of whatever it is you're trying to actually do, and at times Walpurgis.
Yeah.
Right. So that's you're magnifying the power of whatever you're doing aligned to the date. That's why things are done on specific dates, right? So let's say that you want to do a fertility thing, right? Maybe you want to engineer so that you want to do some sort of occult thing, and it has to do with fertility, right? So you want to engineer a whole lot of people, right, are going to have babies on like May 1st, right? Because it's May Day and the May Queen, and the slaying of the Green Man. So, you want to do all that stuff on May 1st because it's a fertility thing. And every baby that comes out on May 1st amplifies what you're trying to do. So that's why. But it definitely does align.
Darren, were you going to say something about that?
So talk about the Fort McMurray fire then, because that was all about that. Have you looked at that at all, Olaf?
No.
Yeah, it started on, now I forget exactly the dates, but
no, but it was that celebration in spring, right? Wasn't it?
Yeah.
The festival.
It started on May 1st. Started on May 1st in this subdivision.
This is really interesting. It's the pagan holiday, right?
Yeah, and it started just after midnight on May 1st. And it took out the whole town, and it started in this subdivision called it's like bonfire. What is it called?
I can't remember.
It was weird. It's definitely got, I think, exactly what you were just saying there.
Yeah,
is that they did this big fire thing. It could have been just some kids in the woods, but they kept who did it and what happened really quiet. And it got kind of creepy there a little bit, so you should look at it.
I'll give you another one. I have not written about it, and I'll probably screw the dates up at the moment. But there was a massive fire in California that occurred, right? So there was the Las Vegas shooting where the guy was up in the hotel, and he was picking people off. And then after that, there was like a fire, and then it was Halloween. I think that's how it went. And it's like, if you look at the alignment of when things actually happen, that the day that like the fires, the day that it was actually about Walpurgis, I think, but the day the guy opened fire in Vegas, that period of time is used as a blood sacrifice time, leading into like I want to say it's Walpurgis, but I could be wrong. And then the fire is the time after the sacrifice time when you're cleansing, right? You're sanitizing, and then you go into the big holiday. There's actually an alignment of, there was a fire, then there was the shooting, and then there was another fire, and then I think it was Samhain happened at the end of it. And if you look at the pattern of how that happened, they were in different places, right? But the times all matched, and the purposes all matched. Yeah. Because you don't necessarily have to do everything the same. You can do it in different places if the intention is still the same.
Yeah. So
it's very weird.
So Michael, this is the fire was on Beltane, right? I think you said, and it was known. Yeah, it was known as the Beast, and it was in Horse River. Does that make sense, Michael? You remember that?
Yeah, there was a subdivision that had actually started right behind in the woods, and it was The name of the subdivision was.
So it wasn't Horse River then?
No, it wasn't Horse River. It was a word that kind of means like bonfires. It's not that important. I wish I just knew.
No, but it is interesting when you put all that stuff together. It does seem.
Well, send me you guys not to get old of me. Send me a link to it. I'll go take a look at it.
Yeah, for sure.
But again, just like the deaths of the UFO researchers, these things happen in patterns, and it's very interesting to see the patterns, right? There's a method to it. It's not random.
Did you ever look into any of this other California fire stuff and the directed energy weapons and?
It's called Beacon Hill.
Oh, Beacon Hill, right?
Oh, there you go.
Neighborhoods behind Beacon Hill, and for Beltane, that's what they would do is they would burn the fires on the Beacon Hills. That's where they would celebrate it back in the day. They would start those fires.
Ooh, there's a Beacon Hill in Calgary. Don't move there.
There's a Beacon Hill everywhere. Every town has Beacon Hills.
Just in case they have to burn this motherfucker down. Good to know.
But again, you start. It's funny because. Then you start to see it everywhere, which is kind of weird when it first happens to you. I remember I was watching a Katy Perry video. I actually wrote an article about this. But I was watching this Katy Perry video, right? And it's the witchcraft one. And people asked her, they said, "Oh, where'd you get the idea from this?" And she's like, "Oh, I got the idea from The Craft," right? And so she's got this whole video, and, of course, Vigilant Citizen and everybody else, oh, look, it's the Eye of Horus. It's the Eye of Horus. Illuminati, right? But they missed the entire subtext of the whole goddamn video. The whole video is basically the Green Man and the May Queen. She's the May Queen, and she has, her feline people protecting her, and the blue men are there, and the Green Man is there, and she slays the Green Man, and I mean, it's all there. The whole May Queen story is there, but it doesn't stop there. So then you go look at the album cover for the single, right? And it's her like walking through a field of wheat in a diaphanous dress. Okay, well, wheat is a fertility symbol, right? And the diaphanousness of the dress will also play a role in that kind of thing. I mean, the whole package is there. And people, I think it's a problem we have in conspiracy theory, is that like you see one thing and you stop, and it's like, I think the whole Eye of Horus thing was a put on, because it's set in Egypt. They're taking the May Queen out of its typical Celtic environment and putting it in Egypt, but all the rest of it's there.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But we stopped short because we saw the Eye of Horus. The minute you see the Eye of Horus, well, everything's Illuminati then. It's like, no, it's not. This is different.
Yeah.
So if people are doing the fires on Beltane and the blood sacrifices in October, how do you push back against that with positivity? Or are people doing that already?
How do I push back against that with
how does anyone, like, is there anyone out there doing positive fucking crazy rituals?
I don't know.
Are they all negative?
I have noticed. Well, but that's the thing. That's the one thing that I think people don't always get about, like, the occult, is that, there are practitioners of the occult that are good. White witches, there are ones that are bad, black witches, right? But the occult by itself, just as its own entity, is neither good nor evil, right? It's neutral. And the thing about the occult is that, and I'm not an occultist, by the way, but the thing about the occult is that if you're going to do something, it's about paying a price, right? So let's say that I don't like you guys. I love you guys, but let's say for a minute, I don't like you guys, and I want to put a hex on you, right? By me putting a hex on you, I have to be willing to take the damage of that hex times 3, right? That's the price I pay for doing it to you. So something's going to come back on me 3 times. Now, it can be good 3 times, it can be bad 3 times, but it's going to come back on you 3 times, right? So, it's capacity for good.
There's always a price to pay.
But why would you do that?
Exactly. And the price you pay is relative to your own desires of what you want it to be. That, you can have a positive bonfire on Beltane, right? Or you can have a negative bonfire on Beltane.
Yeah, maybe it was a positive one. I just got out of control.
Who knows? It doesn't sound like it, but who knows, right? But you asked what we do at Paranoia, and this is the kind of thing we do. That, my editor-in-chief, Ron Patton, he has an obsession with mind control. He's a mind control expert. I'm hoping to get him to publish his book soon about mind control. But he does a lot of mind control stuff. I don't know. I kind of flitter all over the place, I guess, at this point. But we get out there. We try to research things and see what's going on, and then work with other researchers to publish their findings and their info. So that people can find out. And one of the things we're huge about is, people who read the magazine or follow us on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, we're always real big about empowering them. Saying, hey, look, I'm nobody special. The things that make me a good or bad researcher, are intrinsic to you too. I'm not, there's no special secret sauce here. So, we try to empower people to do their own research, and I've been quite happy that we've had a bunch of people that are now going on radio shows and writing books, and, because it was like, hey, go do it. We're big fans. Go do it. So we try to keep things positive.
Do you protect yourself from potential hexes at all?
I do. Of course. Who doesn't?
We should start protecting ourselves from fucking hexes. How do you protect yourself?
How do I do it?
I feel like the studio's got a fucking hex on it right now.
My protection didn't work then, I guess.
Well, obviously I'm Scandinavian, right? So I have a Scandinavian, I have a Viking blessing that hangs over my door that protects everybody who goes in and goes out through my front door. I carry on my person, a Viking symbol of protection. Yeah. It's actually dual-sided. On one side, it has the helm of Awe, which is an Icelandic Viking symbol for protection. And then on the other side, it has a thing called the Viking compass. The Viking compass, if I get lost, it's supposed to guide me home. So I pretty much carry it on my person all the time.
Nice.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Once we move into the new studio, Darren, we'll go through some stuff.
Well, I'll tell you what. When you guys move in the new studio, let me know and I'll make you some.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, you got it. I'll make a nice one. I'll burn it into wood.
I'm married to the White Witch, so she could help me out.
But my stuff is Viking because my ancestors are Vikings, so I figured go back to the source.
I have some Norwegian.
That's what I was told recently too.
There you go.
That it helps to go back to the source. Oh, you got some Norwegian in you too, Dan?
Yeah.
We can mix it up. I got mainly like Scottish, English, Celtic kind of thing. We'll do a little bit of that, a little bit of Native American, a little bit of Norwegian.
Yeah, I'm Norwegian and Swedish.
It's gotta be
and with some Scottish. But like I said, that's what we get into in Paranoia. Originally the magazine was very, very centered around conspiracy stuff. And, in recent years, after long deliberations with Ron, we've tried to open it up a little more than that and say, okay, well, let's just talk about things that we're paranoid about in general, right? The magazine is about paranoia. It's not about just conspiracy paranoia. It's also about paranormal paranoia and UFO paranoia and cryptozoology paranoia. So let's just talk about paranoia in general. And I think that's opened up the magazine and made it more interesting. Yeah.
Do you have any other articles or things in there you think that people would want to hear about? I mean, I've read quite a few, and they're very definitely very interesting.
Well, I just wrote an article myself on Nibiru that I think is very interesting. Nibiru is this, according to Zecharia Sitchin, is this planet with an erratic, exotic orbit that floats around, and the Anunnaki came from it and then enslaved humanity to mine gold, right?
Yep.
Well, it turns out that if you read the actual Sumerian translations, not done by Zecharia Sitchin, but done by people who actually translate Sumerian, the truth apparently is much more strange than that. That it turns out that the word Nibiru itself represents a gateway or a ferry, and the Sumerians actually believed that Nibiru was a gateway or was a ferry point to get to the upper celestial realms where Anu lived, and Anu was their lead god. He was a sky god. And so what I did is I started to dismantle the whole Nibiru thing and to base it on actual Sumerian translations done by guys at Oxford or, more primary sources. And it turns out to be quite odd. Very weird.
I wonder how much AI will help out with that kind of shit.
A lot. AI is scary though, but it can really help a lot with that kind of stuff. There's a funny thing. It's more conspiratorial than anything else. There's a guy named Adam Curtis who makes these documentaries. I love him to death, right? And he made a documentary called The Century of Self, and it's about like our own perceptions of ourselves, and like the kind of industrial complex that's built up around our perceptions of self and things like that. And one of the things that he talked about is that at the dawn of the computer age, right, back in like the 50s, when they were using punch cards, that all these psychoanalysts and psychotherapists thought, oh my God, this is going to be fantastic for psychotherapy. We can program the punch card with crazy people's information, plug it in the computer will tell us what's wrong with them, right? So they did it. And it actually turns out that the computer nailed it. If the individual was paranoid, it would come back saying that they're paranoid or they're schizophrenic or, the borderline personality or whatever. The computer nailed it one after another after another. Okay. So all the researchers are like, well, this is fantastic. This is great. This is a new day for science, right? And then they said, oh, crap, we didn't do a control. Because, in scientific theory, right, you have to have a control group where the output, you know exactly what the answer should be. So they did themselves because they knew what they were suffering from, their anxieties or neuroses or whatever. So they programmed their own personalities into punch cards and fed it into the computer. You know what the computer said?
Schizophrenic as fuck.
Normal.
Schizophrenic.
Narcissistic.
Borderline personality. Narcissistic. Yeah. Paranoid. Yeah.
Well, we're all that.
So you have to, yes. So you have to ask yourself, the day an AI truly activates, what is it going to think about us?
The truth.
That's why it's so dangerous.
It's just going to lock us up in rooms and make us work out our shit.
Mm-hmm. No, it's going to put us in little capsules and turn us into batteries. We're all going to be like Energizer batteries.
That's Matrix. Wow.
Well, what does it need? It needs our creativity.
Need us to feed it, yeah.
So if we just sit in front of a camera and a microphone for 20 hours a day doing whatever you want, that's what it's looking for. That's
dance, Truffaut, dance. We have a question from the chats here, Olav. Have you come to any new conclusions regarding missing people, national parks, Alternative 3, and underground bases?
Oh, somebody's read my stuff. All right. So, Alternative 3, right? One of the things that they talk about, so here's a primer on Alternative 3, otherwise this won't make any sense. So, back in the 50s, so there's this TV show. It's called Alternative 3. It was on in England, in East Anglia television in 1977. And it purported to disclose a program to protect some percentage of humanity in the event of a catastrophic ecological collapse. Okay? And so it goes through the steps. So they have a meeting in the 50s. They determine that we're screwed. So the first step was that they were going to blow a hole in the atmosphere, vent the carbon dioxide into space. That failed. The second alternative was to build bunkers. You can't build enough of them fast enough, so the third alternative was to leave and go to Mars by way of the moon. Okay? So in this idea of populating the moon and populating Mars, one of the things that they had to account for are technicians and janitors and cooks and cleaners and all those people that kind of run the substructure of society.
You mean all those people that are heading to Antarctica right now?
I guess so.
I can cook. I'm a good cook. And I can podcast.
There you go. And I can come up with gibberish. So you need this sub-layer of society, right? Mechanics, electricians, plumbers, all these kinds of things. Now, a certain percentage of those people that are more trade-oriented, your electricians, your plumbers, your computer technicians, things like that, you can hire them. There are people that would be perfectly willing to go to Mars to reboot Windows, But for some of the others, they felt that it was too difficult to kind of farm that out, even though I think people would volunteer, but it's too difficult to farm that out. So what they had is a concept of something called a batch consignment. And a batch consignment is basically where they go abduct a bunch of people and they take them against their will and they use them as slave labor in factories or whatever. So a curious thing happened to me one day. I was doing the research on Alternative 3 to write the book, and I thought to myself, everything else in here, I can align it to something. Because my premise was that if I had read all the arguments. I had read Keith's book, and I had read Alternative 3, watched it. Vladimir Tarjitsky had done some stuff on Alternative 3. And I looked at all this stuff, and I said, okay, well, if it's real, then it has to be aligned 100%. And so far, everything that I had looked for, I had found. It took digging, but I found it, okay? So I said, well, the batch consignment thing must be real, right? So I went and I had a brain fart. I think I was in the shower. I always have these weird ideas when I'm in the shower.
Right?
It's the relaxation response.
It's the same thing too.
I think so. And I thought to myself, oh my God, I got it. David Paulides has written how many missing persons 411 or 911 books or whatever.
Missing 411, yeah.
I don't know.
Missing 411, yeah. Show. Well, he's written a bunch of them. And so I was looking at his website, and I went to his website to find out how many books there were. And one of the things that he had was a map. And the map, he had taken pins or something. I think it was pins. And he had put pins around these concentrations of disappearances inside these national parks, right? And I'm looking at the map, and I'm thinking, that seems familiar to me. The distribution of it. I'm like, that's odd. It looks familiar. And I said, oh, I know where I've seen this before. There was a map made by a guy named Tall in like 1991. And Tall's map shows the western states, and then it shows all these like secret saucer bases and underground cities and tunnels and railroads and all this other stuff. And it's on a map. And so what I did is I overlaid the Paulides map on top of Tall's map, and I had to stretch Tall's map because I couldn't find an original that was big enough. So I kind of stretched it, but then I anchored the points so that like the states fit, and it matched up. So a lot of these places where there were concentrations of disappearances, especially in the national parks, like Yosemite, for example, Tall had said that there's an underground, he called them saucer bases, but they could be just a base of whatever. Well, the position pretty much matched, which I thought was shocking.
Interesting.
So, that's the capture points for batch consignments.
Yeah. Some people have actually gone on record saying that they're taking slave labor to Mars.
Has he gone on the record?
Someone in the chats, Freethinker, posted that Robert David Steele and Fritz Springmeier have gone on record stating that they're taking slave labor to Mars. So I actually copy-pasted Robert David and Steele and Fritz Springmeier, whatever, into the Googles, and it pulled up a CIA.gov document called Bloodlines of the Illuminati by Fritz Springmeier in 1995.
Yeah, Fritz is an interesting dude. I'll just leave it at that. But
wait, am I going to get killed?
This is one of those things you should not dig into, yeah.
Fritz and Ron don't get along. But it's interesting, and actually, I was listening to Coast to Coast, I think, once, and Paulides was on, and somebody asked him about it. and to my knowledge, I'm the only person that ever matched it up. But somebody actually asked him about the match, and he would not comment on it. So, well, that sounds interesting. Let's move on, which I thought was interesting.
No, I mean it's.
But there's definitely
there's got to be something there. I mean, it's. Wonder what I wonder what Sasquatch sightings, if the overlays on there as well.
Well, maybe Sasquatch eat people.
Yeah, they're disguised. The batch consignment kidnapper is dressed as Sasquatch.
Honestly, with the whole last thing, I wouldn't put it past them. I really wouldn't.
So who's them then? Is it like the government? Is it the military-industrial complex? Is it Trump? Is it ex-Nazis from Argentina? There's a long list of suspects.
Communists.
Chinese.
Secret space program.
That's a hard question to answer. I think my own belief, when I wrote the book, it wasn't really about saying, okay, this is who did it.
Yeah.
It's more like, this is what's going on, because I don't think it's clear who does it. And it's like, in order to have something like that happen, right, to have an organized operation of that magnitude, the easy answer is everybody, that it's a multinational thing, that it can't just be the U.S. or Russia or China, or Argentina or Brazil or Uruguay or Germany. It has to be everybody. They all have to be complicit on it in some level, right? Because the amount of research, technological research that would need to be done, just the sheer scale of it. Well, you take chemtrails, for example, right? So chemtrails everybody goes, oh, these contrails, yeah, that's weird, how they dissipate and whatever. Well, the reality is that, and they always say, okay, well, there's a chemtrail fleet. There's a fleet of Air Force aircraft that are dumping this stuff. And it's like, okay, that's great. Here's the problem. If it's the U.S. Air Force, they're not dumping stuff over Canada. So now you're talking about the Canadian Air Force has to be complicit in it as well. And they're not dumping it over Japan. So now the Japanese Defense Force has to be complicit in it, right? And in Russia, the Russian Air Force has to be complicit in it, and the Chinese and the Germans and everybody else. Now you're talking about too much. We don't have enough airplanes to do that kind of thing, okay? But chemtrails are apparently very real. And I call it alternative 1.5. So back in the 80s, I want to say it was the 80s, Dr. Edward Teller, the father of the hydrogen bomb, wrote an article, an op-ed piece, I think it was in the New York Times, called Sunscreen for the Planet Earth. And what he had said was that with the amount of solar radiation that was coming into the Earth because of the ozone layer and a lot of other problems that we have, that it was, and the idea that we were in a greenhouse scenario and the Earth is heating, one of the ways that you could stop the Earth from heating, right, would be to dump particulate matter at high altitude and to change the reflectivity of the Earth, to change the albedo so that more solar radiation is reflected into space than hits the Earth. And so he said that we should have a multinational fleet of aircraft that fly around and dump this stuff in the upper atmosphere. Sound familiar? But here's the problem. There is no chemtrail fleet. It doesn't make any kind of logistical or rational sense to have a fleet of aircraft do this. So what I would argue to you, and what you can find the patents for if you look, is shunts inside of jet engines, the turbine engines that they use for commercial aircraft, that allow them to funnel stuff through the engine exhaust from a different source. And what I suspect is happening is that they're putting additives in the fuel, and those additives are being separated out at ignition time inside the engine and are being populated inside the contrails.
Which you've seen patents for, right?
Right. You can find patents for this from Westinghouse or from Rolls-Royce, the guys who make the engines. And at that point, what you have is every commercial airliner is now part of your chemtrail fleet. And the pilots have no idea what's going on. The engineers the mechanics who are working on the engines don't know what's going on. Somebody somewhere knows what's going on, but everybody maintaining these aircraft, they probably have no idea. But it works. And I can prove to you that it's happening in two ways. One is that there's something called global dimming. Have you guys ever heard of global dimming?
Yep.
Okay. Well, it's measurable. And the greatest example was that the day after 9/11, on 9/12, when they had grounded all the aircraft inside the United States, there were no planes flying. I mean, it's probably the only time in my entire life I've never seen a plane in the sky. The only planes I saw were fighters, right, that were going in over San Francisco. Nothing in the sky. A whole bunch of atmospheric scientists said,
except for the big labs.
Yeah, except for the
there's that one plane taking them back. Yeah.
And Looking Glass, which is the Doomsday plane. Now, these guys were like, "Oh my goodness, this is the best day ever because we can go float balloons and see what's actually going on in the atmosphere without any aircraft." And what they found was that the ambient temperature of the Earth started to rise almost immediately after all the planes were grounded. And the amount of light that was reaching the surface of the Earth increased dramatically. So the Earth became brighter. And the theory was that the contrails are blocking sunlight, so it's making the Earth darker. So for all your listeners, when they go outside and they think to themselves, when I was a kid, it seemed a whole hell of a lot brighter. It was. It actually was brighter.
So you think that triggered more chemtrail spraying, or just a different level of spraying then, or was it going on before that? Do you think?
Oh, it was going on way before that. It actually started in the 60s.
But then they realized that I realize there's a bunch of weather modification, a bunch of stuff going on before, but do you think that they ramped up the program noticing that the difference after 9/11?
No, I think they kept it at a steady state. I think they have to over time increase the volume because the problem becomes greater over time because we're not doing much to curb, over-industrialization. And, in the West, as much as, we drive electric cars and put solar panels on our roof, in China and other places in the third world, they're just belching carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And so we're trying to offset that, but it's like, okay, but so I think they raise it over time. And you can actually see the temperature of the Earth drop in the 60s. I actually put in the book. There's a diagram. It shows the temperature of the Earth drop. And what you can see is that there are spikes, but those spikes are around when there's like volcanic activity and other things that happen. And so then there are spikes, but it's pretty much stayed low and it climbs ever so slightly. The other thing that's increased dramatically, right, is neurological problems like Alzheimer's. And Alzheimer's apparently is caused by aluminum in the brain. And if you're dumping, if you're dumping tiny speckles of aluminum in the upper atmosphere, people are inhaling that and it's getting into their brains. And so you see a rise in these kind of neurologic problems that are related to having metal and heavy metal in your brain.
Brake dust and vaccines is a real prick for that too.
Sure.
Really get you.
But yeah, so that's alternative 1.5, the chemtrail thing, and batch consignments.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So 3 is more about that escape to off world kind of thing. Is alternative 3.
Yeah, the third alternative is the leave.
Yeah.
And I have my own theories about how certain groups tie into leaving and what all is going to happen. Because one of the things that I figured out later that I didn't put in the book was the notion of the Chinese ghost cities. But there are these cities that the Chinese have built where they're not really occupied and nobody can really figure out why the Chinese built them. They're just there. And I started to think about that in relation to alternative 3. And if you look at the positions of these ghost cities, that, if you assume that there's some level of sea level rise, some of the ghost cities in China would be beachfront. But if you assume that we're going to eventually go into some sort of an ice age, which apparently we are, that some of those ghost cities are just below the ice line out by Mongolia. And the Chinese are well known for being long-term thinkers, that they play the long game. So Chinese philosophy is not an immediate return like it is in the West.
Yeah.
In China, they think multi-generationally. So they're looking 100 years or 200 years or 500 years in advance. And they're saying, okay, well, if there's an ice age, we'll have a city to put people in that's below the ice line. And if the sea levels rise, well, we'll have cities to put people who are dislocated from being in like Hong Kong or, Shanghai or these places that are along the coast. Because a lot of those huge cities in China are coastal or they're along rivers. So, they can move people out.
Now they're just gearing up to move all the farmers and villagers into the city again like they did back in the early 1900s. That went real well.
Yeah. Cultural revolution.
They're building a bunch of hotels in Calgary, too. I wonder if that's got something to do with it. Something tells me we're underneath the ice line, though.
Probably.
I don't think so.
It's easy to find out. They publish all that stuff. One of the things I always tell people when I do an interview is I tell them, don't believe me. Don't believe a word I say. I got it all wrong. Go look it up. Come to your own conclusion. The big thing that I do is, you were asking about my research methods. one of the big things that I do is I use Occam's razor. That whenever I look at a UFO sighting or I look at whatever, a conspiracy or anything else, I employ what's called Occam's razor. And Occam's razor is very simple. It was created by a guy named William of Occam. It says the simplest answer is probably the right one.
Yeah, but I find that subjective because, I mean, my simple answer is always different than Darren's simple answer. I mean,
well, everything's subjective.
Yeah. So, getting back to like, who do you ever think that that the intention behind this alternative 3 is really? It's good. It's just, it has to happen at a multinational level, and it has to protect the people and to protect the earth and the population and humans in general. It has to be done in secret. Like, is there a chance that you think that this could be completely, you know, with heartful intention, that it's just to save us, really?
Yeah. One of the big things that I always say in interviews and stuff is I remind people that, you know, some secrets should be kept. Just because I'm a conspiracy guy doesn't mean that I think that everything should be exposed. You know, there are issues of national defense and national interest that, you know, as an American, I don't think should be, you know, sent out to the world. Or as Canadians, you wouldn't think that should be sent out to the world about Canada. There are certain things that should be kept secret. And I think that something of this magnitude, you would have to make it work, because if you didn't, you know, people might start to panic. And
and they wouldn't
understand.
And they won't buy into like, oh, we're going to invest in saving the world 100 years from now, and we're going to kidnap a bunch of people to create a separate civilization of worker bees. You know, I mean, people wouldn't buy into that. Right. But, I mean, maybe that's what's necessary.
I wouldn't buy into
that. Nor should they.
The slave labor part. I definitely don't buy into the slave labor part.
Just going to kidnap
the other problem,
people.
Yeah, that's wrong. But the other thing you have to remember, right, is that your biggest problem of all is who picks who goes.
Yeah.
You know, if you really want to talk about something subjective, who picks who goes?
Yeah.
You know, do I get to go?
I can answer that easily. Not us.
Correct. Not 99.9% of the world.
Unless they need a podcast welder.
I mean, you understand the logic behind having to select who would go. You want the best and the brightest. You know, you've only got a fixed number of people that you can save. You want to save the very best, right? But at the same time, you know, there's self-preservation. You're like, well, I've decided that I'm the best guy out there, so you better take me.
Jeez, I didn't even make it past the first level of Mars 1, so I'm not going for sure.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely not going. But as a person, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that though. You know, because it's like there's nothing I can do about it. So
we could build our own ship.
Sure. That's worked out real well in the past.
Let's just VR Mars.
How did Buddy do anyway? That was going to fly his thing out to prove the Earth was round. I just drove through Saskatchewan, so I'm on the fence again.
I think he went a little ways and broke his arm or something.
Nice. We'll send Graham up there one day.
You really want to get into that now, eh?
No, we're not going to get into that now. No, it's too late.
I have been seeing quite a bit more about that.
But I definitely think these things are happening. And I don't think that it's anything that's going to happen to you or your kids. You know, I think you were a couple of generations away from it. But, you know, they're definitely planning for something. And the benefit is that, you know, they've started to figure out how to get stuff into space and how to make space work. So, you know, that'll have a near-term positive impact on us, I think.
Hopefully it'll be commercialized at some point, yeah.
Well, I mean, when I was a kid, right, you know, you'd read science fiction stories about them putting up orbital mirrors and, you know, and pipelining heavy amounts of solar radiation to fixed points in the Earth. And, you know, even conventionally, they're talking about doing that now with solar farms, picking places that have high levels of sunlight, building massive solar farms, and then sticking orbital mirrors in space to pump massive amounts of sunlight to these places to generate power. You know, that's a positive thing. That means that we get to burn less fossil fuels, have less nuclear reactors, and everything else that could go wrong.
Yeah, they're also talking about fucking blocking us, not just, chemtrails. I mean, that geoengineering is a real thing that the scientists are talking about now too, but now they're talking about a whole protective layer from the sun as well. I mean, that's one thing that really gets me is this fucking around with the atmosphere and the weather and all that stuff. Like, it's one thing to filter the sun to a certain spot on Earth, but to do some mass global protection scheme is just fucking ridiculous to me.
Well, but they're already doing it. In my estimation, in my estimation, it's like when you're screwing around with the weather and you're screwing around with the atmosphere, do as little as possible. Do the bare minimum required to offset whatever the problem is.
Yeah, but I don't even think. I mean, I just think that that's just way too complicated to be able to.
Yeah, it is. The weather is a shifting thing, and you can already see the evidence of them screwing around with the atmosphere. I mean, when I was a kid, in the fall when I'd be out playing soccer, right? We'd be watching electrical storms while we're on the soccer field, lightning, whatever. It's January. It's rained pretty decent. It's okay, but no thunder, no lightning, no nothing. And it doesn't rain here as much as it used to rain. And I mean, I have a relative who's a farmer, and this years ago, I went to his farm, and he was telling us that high-tech farming now, that they pay like people like climatologists to come in and tell them what the weather patterns are going to be like for their various planting seasons, so that they can do the crops. And they inject liquid nitrogen into the soil to boost productivity and all this other stuff. And he was saying that this is years ago. He was saying that the climatologist actually told him that the weather had shifted like 50 or 60 miles. So the weather that he was getting was actually more toward the center of the Midwest. So, and what that meant for him as an individual was that in the past, in the fall, he had actually had to use propane heaters to heat his crops so the ice wouldn't form and destroy his crops. And now he didn't have to use those propane heaters anymore. It was going to save him like $250,000 a year in propane.
So what's the cause of that? Is it all the weather modification you're talking about, or is it like the globalists blaming us for carbon exhaust and carbon dioxide? I mean, that's what bugs me is they're doing all this, but they're blaming us and trying to tax us for it.
No, I think it's a combination of both. Yeah. I think one causes the other. That you have in this kind of a doomsday scenario, right? The vast amounts of garbage in general that we put into the air, magnified by geologic instability. You take that on top of it, then they have to respond and screw with the atmosphere. Then they over-screw with the atmosphere because it's a very, slippery slope, and then you get all kinds of wacky weather. I mean, they're naming weather, or they're naming these winter storms now. And when I was a kid, that was insane.
Why they'd only name the big tropical ones or something like that, or?
Yeah, they would only name hurricanes. And then they started naming tropical storms. Well, I guess they always name tropical storms, but they would name hurricanes. But now you have these winter storms that occur along the East Coast, and these cyclonic vortexes of just sheer ice and snow, and now they name them. It's bizarre. Totally bizarre.
2024 election promises will be weather control and fusion.
Well, the Chinese have already said it. When they had the Olympics in China, everybody was worried because they have such terrible pollution. The Chinese were like, don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. And everybody's like, well, how are you going to do that? You just have insane amounts of pollution everywhere. How are you going to take care of that in like one day? Like, don't worry about it. We got this. And then suddenly, crystal clear skies. They had high winds that pushed all the pollution out. That was obvious weather modification.
Yep, it's happening all over, and they're admitting it. There's fucking companies that are doing it, but they don't want to put that in the big equation, you know?
Well, we did it.
Something like
when
the
we were in
top-
Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
The top 100 companies are responsible for 71% of all emissions. The top 100 corporations on the planet are responsible for 71% of all emissions. But you need to pay carbon tax, Graham.
Yep.
But you know, we've done it ourselves. I mean, when we were in Southeast Asia, you know, we did barium, did barium cloud seeding and other stuff to try to flood out the tunnels along the Ho Chi Minh Trail.
Yep.
You know,
Project
I mean, this
Popeye.
is something that we weaponized. Yeah, we weaponized this a long time ago.
Yeah.
So.
Huh. So I listened to your podcast a couple times there. It's pretty good too. And that you guys had that mind-blowing episode with that couple from alternative, what is it, Truth Frequency Radio or something like that?
Yeah, the Geos.
Oh, it's just mind-blowing, that the Egyptian ayahuasca ceremonies and
yeah.
traveling through the dimensions. And I mean, that was just a fantastic episode.
Yeah, it was interesting.
It's on his website. It's on his website, Paranoia Magazine, but also Paranoia Podcast, I believe, is what it's called. Eh, Olav?
Yeah, we call it the Paranoia Podcast. We're on Stitcher and all those places.
We'll have to get you on
iTunes,
Grimerica.
Stitcher. Yeah. We're not as intense as you guys are. We take long breaks to do research.
Yeah.
Take long breaks.
Yeah, Truffaut takes long breaks.
We put them out eventually.
Yeah. No, it's good. I mean, there's some good stuff in there. I mean, that couple with the trip to Egypt and all that was mind blowing.
It was. Or Richard Allen Miller. That blew my mind. I asked him what was the weirdest thing that you ever saw when you were doing that stuff. He did a kind of men who stare at goats thing with the U.S. Navy and the SEALs. And I asked him, I said, he was kind of a troubleshooter for weird things. And I said, what was the weirdest thing you ever saw? And he said, well, one day I got called out to the Everglades. I said, okay. He says, yeah, we found this woman's head in the Everglades and we were trying to figure out what's up. I said, well, what's weird about that? And he goes, well, the weird thing is that she died 2 hours later. And I'm like, well, okay. I said, but, and he cuts me off. He goes, yes, her head was still attached. I'm like, okay, you found her head and she dies 2 hours later with her head. How does that work? He's like, I don't know. I'm like, okay.
Oh, that's weird. Yeah, we had him on, and people were trying to warn us that he was a shill, and that
we had him on twice.
And I don't think so. I think that was a different.
Is that a different Richard Allen Miller?
I think there's two different ones. Yeah, but yeah, it was. But I was a little bit leery there because, people are sending me emails. Watch out for that guy, and like you're gonna have all these problems happen, and that was weird.
Yeah, we got into a very interesting conversation with him about Base 211. That's a supposed German base in Antarctica. And, it's always been a lot of contention over whether there was really a base there or not. What's the evidence that there was or wasn't. And the whole thing about all these U-boats being captured in Argentina. And he was like, oh, I've been there. Oh, well, hold on a minute. So, yeah, I've been there. Like, what was it like? He's all, it was completely destroyed. Okay. It's like they'd obviously had a war down there. I'm all, okay.
What war was he talking about?
Oh, probably supposedly, what's his name?
Bird?
Oh, his name escapes. Bird. Yeah, Bird went down to Antarctica with this big fleet and a couple thousand guys, and they go down there to test cold weather conditions with their equipment, and then I think he was down there for about a week.
Yeah, it came back real quick.
Took off. Yeah. And it was like, what happened? He's all, I saw strange things in the sky, and things didn't make sense. And according to Richard Allen Miller, they actually had a fight.
Yeah, I was wondering if that's the fight you were talking about. If it went back that far, like so that base was there when Bird went there, and oh man, there's some.
Supposedly, Bird went there to attack it.
Yeah, that's fascinating stuff. That Antarctica and the Nazi flying saucers, and I read these books. We tried to get the author on it. He just flatly refused. But in the mid-'90s, I read this series of books called Project Saucer. And it was a fiction story about this genius guy. And I don't know. I don't remember if he was a Nazi or not, but he had the base up in Antarctica, flying saucers all over the place from there. And it was a fascinating book. And you could tell it was based on a lot of this bird stuff and secret space program stuff. It's one of my favorite topics.
Well, one of the interesting things about the whole Base 211 scenario is that everybody says, well, how would they get the stuff there? And, the obvious answer is cargo U-boats, which did exist. But the other interesting thing is that when Derisi, which is where they worked on the Bell, when Derisi was abandoned, Kamler, the guy who's in charge, he actually had control over these massive aircraft. I think he had like 3 of them, 3 of the 5 that existed. And if you look at the fuel range of those aircraft, they could have easily made it with one stop. And if they chose to land those planes in like North Africa or somewhere in Africa and refuel them, they actually could have made it all the way to Antarctica. It's a Junkers. It was a 6 engine, and there's actually a story that there's a 4-engine variant of it, and supposedly they tested mid-air refueling by putting a bladder of gas in the back of the 4-engine version, and they actually lowered like a hose to the 6 or 8 engine one. And they were actually able to mid-air refuel it.
And this was back when, in the 30s?
40s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, just at the end of the war then is what you're thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it was possible that he could have loaded up whatever he had. And actually, you were asking about Paranoia the magazine, if there were any other articles that were good. In issue 65, we're working on the winter issue, but in 65, the summer-fall issue, we have an article by a guy named Walter Bosley. And Walter is a very interesting guy, but he has an obsession with arrows, the mysterious airships of 1897.
Yeah.
Sonora Aero Club and all that. Well, Walter was going through these collages made by a guy named Delshaw that are basically artistic schematics of the arrows. And in one of the collages, he actually found the bell. I mean, it looks like the bell. It has arrows showing the counter-rotating nature of it, and it's a bell, and it powered one of these arrows. And then you have to follow Walter's research because he links Nimza to the Germans and the Prussians. And there's an odd thing about Kamler. The Kamler was actually Prussian, and that a lot of this stuff took place in what had been Prussia. That Derisi was in, the giant, was actually located in part of what had been Prussia. So there's a deep Prussian connection to Bell research. There's actually a quote I found about Kamler that somebody asked another officer what they thought of Kamler, and they said that Kamler was very dedicated, but it seemed like he was beholden to someone else, that he wasn't really bought into the whole ideology of the SS and the Nazis at the time, but it almost seemed like he was taking orders from other people. So you make of that what you will.
Well, that's kind of where I think the secret space programs, like some of the different programs, stemmed from the separation back then, and I feel like that's how far back these things go, to the old airship stuff. Like it's just been in secret for 150, who knows how many years. That's what I think.
Exactly.
I think it goes way back.
I think it goes way, way, way back.
Like people were flying around before the Wright brothers started. I mean, I think it's just that they weren't sort of global yet. or purposefully not global?
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think you're definitely right. No, it goes way, way back, and the linkages are very interesting when you sit down and look at it. Who is involved in what?
Yeah, you've also got another one that's similar, like Arctic UFOs, hidden cities, military sightings, and the Hollow Earth. I mean, that's just some good articles on there.
Yeah, I try. There's actually a really interesting one that I wrote a while back that I had read in a book, not very well publicized book, but old, from the 70s, I think. And this guy was talking about there was this Marconi Tesla city in the Andes that they had basically built whatever they wanted, and it coincided with Marconi's disappearance, that he had faked his death because he didn't want to work for Mussolini anymore, and he had taken off in he had this yacht, this like super high-tech yacht, and he had taken off, and they had gone to the Andes and actually built like some sort of a monstrous high-tech city in the Andes.
Oh, that's fascinating.
So there's a lot. It's a treasure trove. And more recently, I've been undertaking some Cold War archaeology and going out and visiting some of these old, kind of abandoned radar bases and transmitter sites and other stuff. So to get out,
Hey guys, I'm gonna have to take off here. I gotta go help out the kids. You guys, you don't mind? Sorry, Olaf, but I'm gonna have to let Graham wrap it up from here.
All right, no problem.
No problem.
But I'll message you, and we're gonna get you on the black budget ASAP.
Yeah, we'll get into some more controversial stuff that we shouldn't be investigating.
You boys have fun.
All right, buddy. Okay, thanks.
Okay, bye.
But yeah, it's really it comes down to what you're interested in. Just go research it out. I mean, there's plenty of weird stuff out there. You just have to want to go find it. That's what I found.
So how do you find the time to do that deep digging research though? Like, because I've been thinking about that too. And you mentioned you kind of skitter all over the place, and that's what we're like here on the podcast. Is we touch on so many different topics, and because I'm interested in a lot of different things. But how do you find the time to put the pieces together to come up with like an original research type thing? I find it just overwhelming to even think of that. Yet it's also sort of alluring to maybe try a few of those things.
I think it really starts with, I see something that catches my interest, whether it's a news article or a TV show or a conversation. Something will pique my interest in something, and then I just kind of go with it, and I try to track it down. Like I was perplexed by Alternative 3, so I just decided to figure it out. And I think the trick is to narrow your focus, right? To say, okay, I'm interested in this Tesla Marconi city, and then go figure out everything you can about that.
Yeah.
Not everything that Tesla ever did, not everything that Marconi ever did. Yeah. Just narrow it down and go for it. And
then start expanding from there, maybe. Like once you get down to the, as close to the details as you can, then. Because I mean, I kind of have to do that. I don't do that on a weekly basis, but the podcast is a weekly thing, and I'm trying to research for guests, and like for you, I was like listening to some of your podcasts and reading some things, and of course then I get interested in that, but then I got to switch gears the next week, and I mean, there's so many fascinating things, but eventually I'd like to maybe just one day dig into something deep enough, but I have to sort of stay at the surface level of everything,
Well, the easy way I found to do that, right, is that I tell myself, okay, on Wednesdays I'm going to do research. That's how I started.
Right, yeah.
Or okay, so every day I'm going to write for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Start with something that's achievable.
Yeah.
And and then make a list of things that you're interested in, and just pick one and go for it.
Yeah.
And just stick on that like a rabid dog.
Yeah.
I'm going to figure this one out.
Yeah. So is there anything else anything else you want to mention before we start wrapping it up?
Well, I was going to say that the one thing, though, that I do truly believe is that, I say I'm a conspiracy guy, right? But the reality is I do ancient history and all kinds of other stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't like to be contained into one thing. I do what I feel like.
Yeah.
I'm not here to make money. I have no profit imperative.
Yeah.
So for me, it really is the love of it. So I go for it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I heard you talking about that with Ron, where you guys branched out a little bit more from, or maybe that was even tonight, I can't remember now, if you guys were trying to branch out a little bit more from the just straight conspiracies. I mean, and everything seems to overlap anyways to a certain level. It's like a big, everything kind of becomes a war on consciousness, really, whether you're talking about paranormal or ghosts or Fortean stuff or UFOs or alternative 3. Right. I mean, there's so many things that overlap, even just with spirituality and self-improvement and everything.
Sure.
So
I mean, even Keel and guys of that generation, Keel has said many times that he felt that some of these things were ultra-terrestrial.
Yeah.
Right. Well, what does that mean? So you've got to just go where you want to go and do it because you want to do it, not because somebody told you to.
Actually, that reminds me. I saw a headline on your site about adventures through the ultra world or something like that, and that was like a favorite the Orb album of mine, like this electronica.
I got it.
Really?
You want to hear something?
Really?
You want to hear something? Oh, I love the Orb.
Oh man!
You want to hear something funny?
What?
Okay, so Alternative 3, right?
Yeah.
Do you know who did the soundtrack for Alternative 3?
Brian Eno.
The movie. Brian Eno.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
It's all connected, man.
Yeah. Oh yeah, some of those, because I mean, all those Orb songs are like talking about all the stuff we're talking about, like secret CIA stuff or UFO stuff, and it's like the coolest music, and yet I don't know anybody that really knows them, so it's awesome to hear that you've listened to some of that.
Oh, Adventures of the Ultra World is like one of my favorite albums.
Oh yeah,
I love
it's just fascinating. Yeah,
I love the Orb.
Yeah,
UF Orb.
Yeah,
good stuff.
Right on. That's hilarious. Right on, man. Well, thanks for coming on the show. We should probably wrap it up anyways. And really appreciate your patience with the technical difficulties and starting late and all that. We'll have you back on again for Black Budget. And if you're ever in Calgary, like, look us up for sure and come by and come in studio.
I got to get up there.
Yeah.
All right.
Right on, buddy. Yeah, thanks a lot, eh?
Cool.
And
thanks
of course,
for having me on. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, of course. A link to everything in the show notes. Paranoia Magazine is where everybody can find you, I'm assuming.
Yep.
Yeah. Awesome.
Absolutely.
Dude. Awesome. Keep up the good work, man.
Thanks, you guys too.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
For sure. Thanks, man. Okay, take care.
I sent for you, but you never came around. So look at the shape that I'm in now. We're crying out loud. You left me standing in the freezing cold. Now my tattered umbrella doubles as a lightning rod for lightning bolts. Woo! If I could abracadabra, I'd reach out and grab you and take you home with me. And baby girl, you'd be my queen. Woo! Is this heaven? Have I found you? Or is this purgatory? A never-ending story, and the confusion with the illusion, and the confusion with the illusions, and the confusion with the illusions. Da 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 da. Is this heaven? have I found you? Or is this purgatory a never-ending story? And the confusion with the illusion, and the confusion with the illusion, and the confusion with the illusions. Da 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 da. You left me standing in the freezing cold, and now my tattered umbrella doubles as a lightning rod for lightning bolts. Woo! If I could abracadabra, I'd reach out and grab ya, take you home with me. Baby girl, you be my queen. Woo! If I could abracadabra, I'd reach out and grab ya, take you home with me. Baby girl, you be my queen. Baby girl, you would be my queen. Baby girl, you'd be my queen. Baby girl, you would be my queen. Hablando los azules, bend it over until my blue suede shoelace.
Spam Graham, Graham.